You're tuned into The Collective Voice, thought-provoking interviews co-hosted by young adults, fostering deep faith through courageous questions. Welcome to the conversation. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of The Collective Voice. We are grateful for your tuning in to this episode. We are thrilled to have a repeat guest on the podcast again. Cece's back with us, and I'm going to let Rudy, I should introduce myself. I'm Phil Dickey, the Director of Congregational Innovation, and I'm joined by Rudy Logan again. And I'm going to let Rudy introduce our guest officially, even though, again, she's been on the pod, because this is a follow-up of some work that he has been leading in our 787 Collective. So go for it, Rudy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rudy Logan. I apologize that the lights just went out just now. I don't know what that's about. But here we have with us Reverend Cecie to talk about our Clarksville pilgrimage experience. Can't wait to hear about your insights. But before we get into that, just want to provide the opportunity for you to introduce yourself and then also share a little bit about this FASPE fellowship that you just completed.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Cece. My pronouns are she, her. I serve as pastor to Spirit in the Hills Lutheran Church in Spicewood, Texas, about 20 miles outside of Austin, and as well as the founder and co-leader of Gather Austin, a young adult ministry for the greater Austin area, connected and collaborative ministry. And yeah, I just 10 days ago got home from Poland after being in Germany with the fellowship at Auschwitz for the study of professional ethics, the FASPE. This was the 15th year of programming and having fellows, and I was one of 14 clergy and religious leader fellows. Predominantly Christian group this time, but typically ecumenical and interfaith. We had two Jewish fellows, one a chaplain, one in rabbinical school. And we were partnered with medical fellows who were either in medical school or residents of various types, from psychiatry to neurosurgery and everywhere in between, as well as journalists, most having completed journalist school and have been working in the field predominantly as reporters of various kinds. So I'd actually applied to the FASPE, the fellowship, twice in seminary. And so this was my third time, kind of my last time of hoping to be accepted. And the focus is on professional ethics, as the title suggests, specifically with the role of professional in the Nazi regime, both in terms of those deeply intertwined within it, and as well as the people who might have had bouts of resistance or wrestled with what it meant to resist. Some of our main focus points were on moral neutrality, complicity, dehumanization, and more. And it was incredibly transformative. I knew it would be. I had heard from alumni that it would be. And I was still struck by just how reframing it is, how transforming it was. And especially the connection to the fellows. Ministry can be a lonely place, and it can be a place that feels isolated. And so to have 2 weeks with young adults, some younger than me, some slightly older than me, in various professions, who are driven and creative and kind, who challenged in ways that was not light, but in love. It was super special. And I'm sort of sitting in this, just got back super high from the trip, and also wondering, what does that mean for these people who live all over the world, for us to have had such close connections, to now be back in our local contexts. So I'm wrestling. What does it mean to have borne witness to some of the most atrocious avenues of dehumanization that resulted in millions and millions and millions of deaths, horrible deaths? And what does that mean for us now in this time where some of these things feel all too similar to what we're seeing going on here in the United States and beyond? So, yeah,
maybe this was that way you just answered this question, but why this fellowship? Like, clearly you've applied for it a few times here. So why were you so intrigued or insistent upon doing this fellowship specifically? I mean, this is not a light fellowship to go and be a part of.
Right. Yeah. You could have done 2 weeks somewhere else. I think part of it was yearning for further depth, yearning for that ecumenical interfaith work. I went to Lutheran seminary, so I'm very well versed in Lutheran circles, as well as that focus on really what is our responsibility? What is my responsibility as a person and also as a leader, as a young leader who's grappling with the dynamics of the multiple spaces, right? From church to young adult ministry to synod to national body to child of God, like follower of Jesus. And I think it felt really timely for me because I've been out of seminary now for 2 years, really 3, because my last year of seminary, I was an intern in a parish. So I've been away from the classroom for 3 years. And I was yearning for that space to dive in and learn and be challenged and pushed, which is in a sense in a safe way, right? Because I'm day to day living and doing the work, sometimes flying by the seat of my pants, right? The classroom can have a level of safety to it of like, let's explore these concepts when it doesn't feel as much is at stake, right? Like walking into a pastoral care visit in the hospital, like it's a different stake than sitting in a space discussing theory. Not that the fellowship was easy, not that it was safe and cozy, but that it gave an opportunity, like a liminal space to do some of the step back work that I don't often have time to do day to day, week to week here in my ministry setting. So, and that was one of the important learnings I might be preaching about it this Sunday. I've wondered, will I ever preach a sermon again that's not related to the fellowship? Because I just did one and I'm probably going to do one again. But one of the big learnings was if we don't take the time to think, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Who am I listening to? Do I agree? Like if I don't sit and reflect, it's really easy to fall into systems of injustice. Because time is a luxury. And I was constantly challenging the medical fellows about that, right? Like, I got the luxury of time in my work, something that you don't have. How does that feel? So, yeah.
Cece, I'm curious, what are some of the learnings that you're eager to practice here in your local context in Austin?
I think when we were touring Auschwitz-Birkenau, which still like every time I say something like that, it feels absurd to say. But our guide, Powell, made it very abundantly clear the myth of not knowing, right? Like I thought when I learned about World War II and the Holocaust in school, like, oh, well, they didn't know. How could they? That was far away. That was separate. And he kind of was like, reality check. People knew. How could they not? And taught us in ways that did make it clear. And he said, so we need to think, years ahead, are they going to say, how did they not know in 2025? And I felt like that was a gut punch. I'm like, come on, man. I mean, that's part of his job, right? But I wrote that down in my journal. Like, what did they know? How did they not know in 2025? Why didn't they do more? And so coming back, I've been really wondering, what is this going to do to my sense of call and vocation and involvement? He said, to that question, it starts with maybe getting involved in something. Go volunteer, go be a mentor, go serve at a food pantry. And so wondering in my congregation's own discernment, where are we called together to bear witness, to speak out, to be a voice? I also think that the responsibility piece, right? Like, what are we responsible as professionals? Is not going to leave me anytime soon. So probably wrestling with colleagues and presenting to colleagues. I know some are in calls that, they've wondered, well, how do I do something? What does that mean for our budget if we do this? What does that mean for our giving base if I push that? What are the stakes if we don't, right? Like, so I'm still sitting with it in a lot of ways. I've wondered how to bring it exactly to my congregation. And then, like I said, through God, giving us the Good Samaritan, the Merciful Samaritan as our reading for this past Sunday, it just was very apt for a FASB sermon, FASB reflection sermon. So I think it'll change my teaching. It'll change my focus. It will change, has already started to change, what I feel responsible to. What are the risks that are worth taking in love, through justice, with a heart on those two greatest commandments of loving God and loving neighbor. I don't know how much that answered your question.
That's good. I think there's some clear, well, maybe we can make some connections here, because Rudy, will you give us a little bit of background on the pilgrimage work? Because I think that there's got to be some opportunities here of, you had this experience in Poland, but you also had an experience in Austin and opened your eyes in a whole new way that I think transformed how you want to be in ministry in Austin as well. So Rudy, will you give us a little background on the pilgrimage work that you've been working on?
So absolutely. As Cece mentioned, this question, like, how did you not know? I'm thinking about that in the context of pilgrimage in Austin, and how through pilgrimage, we not only seek to connect young adults with local communities through spiritual and educational experiences, we also seek to go into places that have been silenced, that represent a kind of silenced past, a silenced history that might invite us to walk outside of the normalcy of empire, right? To borrow from Wes Ramberg Michelson, he's a theologian that Phil and I have been in conversation with about pilgrimage. And he talks about pilgrimage as inviting us outside of the normalcy of things, right? Spiritually, politically, etc. So Cece, I would love to hear, especially from you as someone from Austin, like, in learning about Clarksville, like, what were your initial impressions?
Yeah. As a native Austinite, right? Like, grew up, born and raised. My first encounter of Clarksville before our pilgrimage was going to a friend's house and thinking, like, wow, this is a nice area. Driving past on Enfield, 15th Street as a high school student, going to House Park right downtown for football games, and thinking the access of all of those neighborhoods, not knowing the names of them, of course, as a 16, 17, 18-year-old. But all of that was shifted with this pilgrimage in Clarksville. I remember driving up, finding a parking spot with my husband, and looking around at houses that were beautiful and also historic. You could tell. And they're in that part of Austin where they're old houses or tear downs, right? And more modern looking new ones. And we walked up to a park, and there was a splash pad with a birthday party going on when we found Rudy and some of the other folks that were there with our guide, Otisha. And I just remember being struck with that silence history that I had never learned about. Native Austinite, grew up in the city, grew up 20 minutes from Clarksville, having driven past it to go to various things. And I was so grateful for her willingness to join us, to share that history, that oral history, right? Something that her ancestors who had lived there, she herself having been raised in Clarksville, having lived there for most of her life until recently, was so open to sharing a very vulnerable thing, right, to a group of predominantly white young adults. And I was quite honestly a bit appalled at the city of Austin and the intentionality that they had in trying to force what was a freedmen's community to move in line with that city plan in 1928, right? Like,
Right.
that really pushed a lot of Black Austinites into the East Side, which is where like a little small section, a lot more environmental racism there, and thinking like Clarksville is one of the most desirable communities to live in Austin because it's walkable, because it has great school districts, because it is beautiful. And so the city wanted to force out Black Austin residents to continue gentrifying and developing. So it had a tainted history, but there's also such a proud history there. Specifically, you tell with Otisha, the love that she had for her neighborhood and for its legacy, which I had never learned about until I was 28 years old. Through the 787 Collective, through Rudy, right? Through Rudy's pilgrimage. So,
okay, talk to us a little bit about what that looks like for a pilgrimage aspect, right? Like like there's one thing to do kind of tourism or just a learning experience, but what made this a pilgrimage for you?
Yeah. So I was very privileged in undergrad and campus ministry that we went on pilgrimages together for spring break. And so my campus pastor gave us this whole framing of what a pilgrimage is. It's not a trip, it's not tourism. It's different. It's about a journey and it's about transformation. And so even like we went to Peru, we went to the Pacific Northwest, we went to Houston, and we were in Bryan College Station. So Houston, Bryan College Station is not that far. You might not really think it's a trip. But we also went to Scotland, right? So like we did various travel, various movement. But all of those weren't just about the places we were going. It was about the journey along the way. It was about getting there. It was about reflection. It was about intentionality. And so Clarksville was the shortest trip pilgrimage I've ever taken. From my house to Clarksville was like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But there was a level of a journey, of an understanding, like almost like an unveiling, that I found to be true in those other pilgrimage experiences that I've had in my life, whether they were to Houston or to the Pacific Northwest or overseas, where it was an intentional opportunity to try to be open and to have some things pushed aside, that preconceived notions, especially. Pilgrimages feel very liminal. I know that's kind of a buzzy word, but it's a word that I've loved for a long time, right?
It's a good
an
buzzy
in-between.
word. It's a good buzzy word,
yeah. Right? But it is buzzy. So I felt like the Clarksville pilgrimage was a pilgrimage because of that, both the journey behind it. I don't know all the work that Rudy and Phil, like that y'all had done, probably Rudy mostly, all had done to get there, but that in and of itself, the preparation, the invitation, they had journals set out for us to take notes with. They had water provided, like, so our needs were taken care of. They had food afterwards. The guide had come in willing to share, and it allowed for a space of transformation and learning. And like I said, moving beyond just what I thought I had known into a deeper understanding. And I think that's an important thing about pilgrimage in this challenge, right? Like we had just talked a little bit with the FASB about the safe space to be challenged, or safer spaces to be challenged. And I felt like there was a challenging aspect to that for me as a native Austinite who, white woman, like has not had to wrestle with some of the histories that other Austinites have, that maybe through my lack of understanding has been complicit in, right? So a trip can be something that's like transformative as well, but more in a sense of like opting in, cozy, fun. Not that we didn't have fun at the Clarksville pilgrimage, but it was also something that we wrestled with, or I wrestled with, and I know my husband wrestled with too, thinking, wow, he has colleagues that want to live in Clarksville because they work downtown, and I'm like, so the next time you have someone tell you that they want to live in Clarksville, are you going to say, like, you know what that community was originally?
Do you know the history? Exactly.
Do you know the history of that community? Right, exactly. Yeah. Will you be welcomed there? Because we learned a little bit about some like spectral presences, which was so cool. And then she taught us
Okay.
about that, and then a branch fell, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh
you
my
have to say
God.
more about spectral presences because this is a good story for sure.
Sorry, Rudy, I'm taking
No,
it off.
no. Actually, my next question was going to be like, how did this experience sit with you theologically and religiously? I mean, thinking about the establishment of the Clarksville community, the founder,
Mhm.
Charles Clark, created this community in part so newly emancipated Black people could practice their religion freely. And
Right.
then not long after, there was the establishment of Sweet Home Missionary Baptist Church, which was developed by the Reverend Jacob Fontaine, among a number of others here in Austin who wanted to break free from the kind of slaveholder religion that they were bonded to, right? Even thinking about Jacob Fontaine and his time being enslaved by Edward Fontaine, right, at St. David's. But then also the spectral element, right, where Otisha's talking about how the spirits are there serving as kind of gatekeepers in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And how when she was retelling this story of a cousin of hers and his girlfriend at the time coming to visit them in the community, and all of a sudden our car just stopped, right? And then Otisha and her cousin went down to get her, and her car started working again. So they took that as a sign that, you know, the ancestors of Clarksville perhaps, you know, did not see this person as welcome there. And then as she's telling the story, a tree branch drops, which for me, like totally like unsettled, like, or basically put away all skepticism I had
Right.
about like this story about the spirits and so forth. So Cece, like, how did this experience sit with you theologically and religiously?
Yeah, I think it's important, and I'm glad that you named that history of like, it was a part of the founding. And it was very evident in Otisha's explanation of what Clarksville meant to her. It wasn't a neighborhood, it wasn't where she lived, it was her community. It was her family. And she would say, so and so lived there, so and so, like first name of the people that had lived there and the houses that she was a part of, and having to go to that church and sing in the choir, and like the neighbor woman catty corner that never went to church but would always know if they weren't singing loud enough because she could hear it from her porch and would chide them to sing louder. So it was very clearly like had the markings of what I think any religious community should offer, right? Like any community of various types of religion. I don't think it's just Christianity, but what I would hope a church would offer, like the ways that I've been transformed and cared for and accompanied by congregations and ministries in my life, like it sounded so reminiscent of that. And I thought, wow, like I don't feel the same way about my neighborhood. And that's a shame, you know, like that's a shame. And the element of being able to have the freedom in so many different levels, right? Especially for emancipated former enslaved people. But to go beyond like the white man's religion, what had oppressed them, the freedom to do that in community, in a safe space, felt incredibly powerful to me. I was blessed as a kid by my youth minister, Deacon Bree, when we'd ask her questions. And I was in the troublemaker Bible study groups, her Bible study group, because, you know, the other kids in youth group would be like, haha, Jesus was so interesting in that text. And we'd be like, so what's the nature of sin? And like really kind of brought the level down.
Brought the
And we
level
would
up.
ask,
That brought the level
brought the
way
level
up.
up. Yeah. But you know, different vibes. So we all got put into her Bible study. And we would ask her these questions and ask her these questions. And she would say, all right, here's a Deacon Breeism. And she would explain like her answer based on her faith, her experience, her seminary education, and more. And then she would end it and say, but I don't know, because I'm not God. And I think there's a level of like openness to that and
humility. Yeah.
And humility, and also just like, we don't know. So when I have parishioners or people explain things to me and they're like, I don't know what you're going to think about this, Pastor. And I'm like, I hate to break it to you. I'm not God, so I don't know. And I think sometimes I love my tradition. I love being a Lutheran. I lucked into it. I was born into it, born and raised in the Lutheran church. Um, and I love our theology. And I also ascribe to feminist theology. And I also ascribe to Celtic spirituality. And I also ascribe to liberation theology. Not that I think the ELCA would disagree with any of those things. But I think we can do ourselves a disservice when we say, this is what you believe it. And you don't allow a space and an openness to what more there might be. And so I saw that very clearly. And I remember having a bit of skepticism because I'm like also a scaredy cat. Like I don't watch horror movies. I don't watch things. And she wasn't like, these things are scary. But you know, the way that the horror films have like changed those presences. But when that branch fell, I was like, oh, okay. Like this is clearly here in a present way and important to this community. And also like how honored and humbled did we then, I feel like, become to be like, and we're here. Like, can you welcome us as well? So sometimes I have to remind myself, maybe if it's not a part of my experience, or maybe it's not something I understand, that I shouldn't be closed off and judgmental to it. It can be easy to do so. But I appreciated that because it's not my legacy. It's not my history. And I shouldn't be able to say, well, that's wrong. Not that that's what I was thinking. I was just like, oh, this is different. But also not incongruous with what I have heard about other types of spiritualities as well. So I thought it was cool and unique, and also probably not all that unique, because here we are sitting in lands that aren't ours, right? Like in histories that have happened long before my ancestors were here. What am I missing from not being open in the same ways?
I love the connection back to what you said about the classroom versus like having practical ministry of like I can sit and debate theory and you
Yes.
know what are my thoughts on like the spiritual realm and the like I can debate all these things in a classroom, but when I get out somewhere and then I have an experience with somebody like that when a branch falls, but like there's also something that comes up where I'm like, my theory just went out the window, because like the
Right.
hair is up on the back of my neck, and for a minute here, I'm gonna just walk away because like I've had similar experiences, right? Where I'm like I don't know how to make sense of this, even though like my semi-materialist mind frame says like this does not make sense. I can't logically make sense of this, and then I have to at some point again humility say there are some things that seem totally nonsensical that I don't know how to explain. And then I get in the idea of like, oh, but we also only recognize, the parts of the universe that we can actually observe. But like, how many percentages they are giving to dark matter and dark energy now? It's well over like 75% or something like that. So clearly, the materialist understanding of what we have in the universe is such a small aspect of who we are and what creation really is. So I just appreciate this conversation, and I love the openness to the conversation and the experience that you had in that space, and allowing yourself to move beyond what your head might think to truly
Yeah.
have your heart and your soul even stirred in the midst of it.
Yeah.
I wonder, as somebody who has experienced pilgrimages in the past and then having this one, what role does pilgrimage play in your kind of like day-to-day spiritual, and maybe not day-to-day,
Mm,
but like your regular spiritual practices and spiritual growth? Like, are there things you used the
mm,
word intentionality earlier?
mhm.
Like, are there things that you take from a pilgrimage that then plays into your continuing spiritual growth and development?
Let's say yes, and right, like the experience of a pilgrimage, especially those that are longer, like, because that was an afternoon and we did like leave it. My husband and I went together, right? And we were talking about it and thinking, well, what are other places that we don't know the story of here in Austin? Or hearing, like, once I was listening to the radio and it was talking about how there's some like Austin History Museum, just like in a library, one of the libraries downtown, or other places that like I could go and learn. And I don't, right? Like, and then Saturday comes and it's our one day off together and we got to do chores and we want to have fun. And so, like, the privilege of a pilgrimage is it gives you that time, and it locks you in intentionally, because sometimes the demands, whether they are work or life or fun or family or what it might be, can take away. And so what I loved about our campus ministry pilgrimages and some of the things that I did in seminary, was it was like a week, 5 days, whatever. And it gets you out of your regular rhythm, and it puts you into community to do it with and walk alongside. That was important to me. Like, I've done a solo retreat. I did one earlier in January to Bernie, to a convent. I stayed in a really great house, and it didn't really hit me the same way out of these other things I have done, because I was doing it by myself. And maybe if I had had a little bit more intentionality going into it, it would have changed it. But I liked the community aspect. And the community aspect also has helped me in walking away from it. Because if I go by myself, it's kind of like, okay, now I'm only beholden to me in explaining what happened and being transformed by what happened. But when I leave with others who went through the same thing, we can say, like, huh, did you know about that? Or how did that impact you? Or, now that my husband and I drive back past Clarksville, we'll think back to that trip together. And I could do that by myself, I'm sure, but there's an added level to it to have done it with others. So I think those are some of the things that make a pilgrimage so transformative for me, is when I've done it with other people, because it helps me keep it in mind day to day. The intensity as well can help it, like, especially coming off of this fellowship, it's like, whoa, I really feel transformed, and I'm very clearly wrestling with things. But I can text my friends from it and be like, are y'all having a hard time adjusting, like, to back to normal as well? And they can be like, yeah, for sure, this is weird. So I wish I could say I go on a pilgrimage every year, because I don't. Probably not. Maybe, but I don't think I do. And I wish I could say that the transformation happens and it's something I think about forever. But eventually, like, I'm gonna get sucked into emails and or distracted. So I think the gift of a pilgrimage is the time, both before, like the planning and preparation, the during, and then the after. And when that after is stewarded intentionally, whether it's through like further conversations like this, right? Like, this is awesome for me. Part of me is like, I wish Mike was on this call, and Medi was on this call, and Riley was on this call as well, and Meg. So yeah, I think they have such a strong place in my life. Like, I think back to going to Iona with campus ministry and this trip to Houston on the Eucharist and racism, right? Like, not easy topics. And these others, like going to Clarksville with y'all, and it's like, and I wish I had someone to offer those to me every year. And also part of it's on me to take the time. I wondered that, like, I've been thinking with Gather, because we have money for a retreat for a grant that we wrote. And it's like, we should really do a retreat. And I'm like, but would people take time? Like, would they like take vacation for this? Like, I'm like, Gather should go to this place or this, like, Gather should go on the Camino, Gather should do this. And it's like, well, Cece, let's do something smaller. Like, maybe don't jump so big. There's a lot of money, a lot to plan. But cool.
Start small, right? You can
start
build.
Smaller. Maybe start smaller. But I've
Will you
wondered,
remind
like,
everybody what Gather is real fast, just in case somebody doesn't know?
Sorry. Gather
No,
is the young adult ministry here I steward. It's a part of this larger Gather network that does region or city-based ministry rather than like one congregation specific. And Gather Austin was the 5th Gather site ever. There's now over 30, which is super cool. You can look at the map at gathernetwork.org. But yeah, I think I've wondered that. Because some people don't have time off and some people don't do, and there's other demands in life. But I know when I leave something like that, like, I leave so transformed. Like, I know it's worth it. And also I'm like, but so.
So So Cece, we've had conversation about young adults in ministry also, taking on the role of stewarding pilgrimage themselves.
Hmm.
Is that something that you could see yourself with the Gather Network doing?
Yeah, I think so. And I've tried to do it with my congregation. We went on a retreat last fall to Marfa, Texas, which is out in West Texas, like very close to Big Bend. And there was something to be said about the fact that we were away and that there was intentional time to be away. And a lot of my congregants are retirees, so everyone who went on that trip was retired. We're about to go next month, in less than a month now, to Holden Village, which is a Lutheran retreat center in the North Cascade Mountains, a very important place to me. My necklace is actually Holden. We got engaged there. And so I'm doing those in my congregation, less like named pilgrimage, but how I feel. Are they similar to it? And I've wondered then, what are the opportunities with Gather? What if there was something like a Gather Network opportunity? They do at Rainbow Trail, um, Lutheran camp in Colorado, they have a young adult week, young adult backpacking week. They had invited me to be the speaker for it this year, but it conflicts with that date in Holden. And also, I'm like, I'm not really a mountain climber. I don't know about that. Um, they invited Joel, and then he's like, I also can't go because of this Holden thing. But I've wondered if there are other ways too. So they're kind of dabbling, playing around with it, and inviting Gather folks to go there. But I've wondered, I know, Phil, I don't know if you were at, Rudy, the conference, the Gather Network Lutheran Campus Ministry, like conference that they were able to do while my fellowship was going on. And I would wonder maybe if there's any conversations about additional ways to gather like that. I would love it because, we have Gather Austin here, and there's no gathers in any other state surrounding Texas. We're the only gather site in Texas that's like official, and there's not one in New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, or Arkansas. Like there's less gather sites in the South than there are in other places. So sometimes I can feel a little isolated down here. Whereas, you look at the state of Minnesota, there's like 10 gather sites, there's a Gather New York and a Gather Long Island. And so they're able to like meet up to do things. So we could have a pilgrimage simply to see other gather sites, and that would be transformative, I think. But yeah, I would love to bring it, and also, and this might just be a cop out, it's like, but how would I have time? I have so much on my plate. And that's part of the struggle as well. And going back to what I learned at the fellowship, right? Like when you're not intentional with your time, how you get set into these rhythms. I know that was like a weird answer to your question, Rudy, but it's like a yes and no, and I wish, and I should.
No, that's totally fair. Going back to your earlier point, I think that's part of why it's so important to do this in community, right? So
Yes.
all of this planning and so forth doesn't have to be on you. We're on the process of creating a guide that can help people, see how this is really a process of co-design
Mm,
with those from the community and those within your young adult, ministry network or collaborative, et cetera, right? This is
mhm.
a community engaged process. Um, and I think that that's one of the gifts of this pilgrimage guide that we are working on currently, right? Because we know many young adults are overprogrammed, right? So how can we help meet
Mm,
them where they are to help them get these rich experiences?
mm,
And Rudy was there as well in St. Louis. It was a gathering of campus ministers from the ELCA, the PCUSA, and the Episcopal Church, and he actually got to do a presentation, a workshop on pilgrimage. And so I think that is the hope: is we want to figure out how does this pilgrimage that we're creating here, like Rudy just talked about, like have a toolkit or have a guide that would be easy, right? There's nothing easy about this work,
mhm,
but like that
mhm,
would be an accompanying piece to help folks bring this to their space. And I think that's what we want to do through 787 too. And, if you're listening to this and curious, like, I want to do a pilgrimage in my city, like, that's what we want to do. We want to figure out how to partner with young adults in their cities to make that a possibility. And this is a shameless plug, but shout out that if you want to come to Progressive Youth Ministry, which is not just youth ministry, we're also doing a young adult ministry track this year. Rudy will be giving another workshop on pilgrimage, so you can come and learn about it. And we're still playing with, but we're hoping to figure out if we can create a tangential adjacent work or project with Progressive Youth Ministry where we'll actually take people on a pilgrimage during that time in November. So more to come on that. We'll for sure be posting about that and talking more about it as the time comes. But yeah, that's the hope for this, right? Is that we believe there's transformational opportunities through pilgrimage, and that we want to figure out how to partner more with young adults in various cities. And the Gather Network may be a really cool opportunity to partner with in that.
Yeah.
All right. Final thoughts, Rudy. What do you think?
Well, I'm just so thankful that Cece was able to come on and share her experience. I feel like it was so deeply reflective of the experience of all of us on the trip, especially from the conversations that were taking place, and how Clarksville religion and spirituality, like in some ways, defied, Western convention, dominant conventions of how we understand Christianity, and just how rich it was to learn about the placemaking, right? And how relationships were the anchor to how this community moved in ways that really provide us ingredients, for how we can fashion our communities in the present. So I thank you, Cece, for just coming and amplifying that and more, and then sharing about your FASPE fellowship. And we really just appreciate the ministry you're doing, and we appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate both of you. And like I said before we got on this, big fans. The 787 Collective has been such a great support system for me as a person, for the work that I'm doing as a young adult leader, and for Gather. And we were so honored that y'all invited us to be a part of that pilot group. And I know that there are others that wanted to go and for various reasons weren't able to. So keep us in mind for other pilgrimages, because we want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of it. And I appreciate all that y'all are doing and the good work of amplifying young adult leaders and amplifying those spaces for silenced histories, right? To come to life.
Okay, we talked about a lot of heavy things. Cece, where have you experienced beauty lately?
I'll say when our last day in Krakow, Poland, we went to what was a salt mine, a limestone quarry, not a salt mine, and that became a lake system. I don't know how they filled it with water, but they filled it with water, and it had pools that they've created, and we went swimming, and I think it's the most beautiful place I've ever swum in my life. And here we had to take a tree out of our yard this past spring because it had died, and it has allowed this garden in front of my window right here in my office to just explode. Like, it gets a lot more sunlight, and so I have Turk's caps that are so full of little red hats and these yellow flowers, and so I've been seeing these pollinator bees going around, and I just love the colors of summer in Texas. It's so green right now because of those devastating rains. So our hearts are really heavy, but also like thanking God for this nourishing water too. And then the colors of, crepe myrtles and others. I just think it's hilarious. It's like 100 degrees outside, and Texas is like, and here's the beautiful flowers.
The resiliency of those flowers, right?
So those are some
incredible.
beauty moments for me.
Thanks for sharing that. We will link to Gather Network and Gather Austin in the show notes. So if anyone wants to find that,
please do.
Yeah, and we hope that whoever's listening will connect with Cece and the work she's doing. It's just great work. So we're always grateful for you, Cece, and the feeling is definitely reciprocal. We're just grateful for you and that we get to be in ministry with you.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Blessings. Grateful for all who listen, and 787collective.org if you want to connect with the work we're doing. We'd love to partner with you in your city. Go in peace, my friends. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Collective Voice, the premier podcast of the 787 Collective. For more information, visit us at 787collective.org or find us on social media. And if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate us, and share a review. For when you do, you're tricking the algorithm for the common good.